If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
About weeding the garden. There's a lot of techniques in which people will weed, and sometimes they don't do it quite right.
Right. So weeding is obviously important for your garden because weeds can choke out your plants possibly.
And weeds, the reason why this occurs is weeds have 3 different ways of propagating.
Right. So one is they can propagate by the roots. They can propagate by their seeds.
The reproductive seed cycle.
And what's the third way?
And by rhizomes.
Oh, rhizomes.
So, and some plants can do all 3. That's the thing. They will outcompete your tomatoes, your peppers, your eggplants, your lettuce, because those plants are only basically have one means of reproductive system, and that's the seeds. And these other plants, they will choke them out and compete with nutrients in water as well. So one is you can simply
pull the weeds.
Pull the weeds.
Okay, so when you pull the weeds, though, you want to make sure you're removing the roots, not just pulling the weed. Okay, the weed's gone.
The top is gone.
The top is gone.
Very little root structure.
You know when you do this because you pull it out and you kind of feel it snap or break. And most of the time you'll be like, oh, well, whatever. I'll go on to the next one. But if you're looking for some sort of permanent or semi-permanent solution, pulling that
reduction of weeds. Yeah.
Pulling that root out is going to help you.
Because if you leave a small chunk or portion or segment of that root in the ground, it will regrow. We've seen this happen over and over again. There's many plants that will propagate from root cuttings. So you just leave, a half inch or a fragment in the ground, it will regrow. And if weeded properly, when the soil is damp and the soil will fall off the root, you can actually see in some of these plants where the plant is growing in the spot, and then you pull it out, and that root is 6, 7, 8 inches underground, and it has started to germinate another growth tip that is piercing through the soil away from the parent plant. It's like a daughter plant, essentially. And it will regrow, and it'll continue to walk itself across the garden or wherever you're at, under the ground, pop up, under the ground, pop up. So we want to remove, and people say, well, I till every so often. And when I till, I have more weeds in 2 weeks than I did before. Well, that's because you're chopping the roots up. Now, sitting there and digging the roots out with a trowel or a garden fork, purging the beds, it's a tedious process, not for everybody. I get that.
But it's definitely something if you want to reduce weeds, if you're planning on using that space as a garden for a long time, and you want to become efficient in your weed reduction, and you're growing, it's something that you could invest your time in. If
you want to limit the amount of weeds that you need to pull, raised beds, containers, giant grow bags, straw bales. Those are your... there are a little bit... the raised beds is an upfront cost with a long time payout, because the minimal amount of weeds, because you're bringing in good compost, good potting mix, whatever the case is, whatever purple cow mixture you want to put in the raised bed, you're putting that in there, and only weeds that you have is what's coming from the sky, from birds, air that you may, blow in. You can use chemical applications, but you need to be careful what chemical you're going to use for your weed control aspect.
Right, definitely. So we'll get to that in the next segment. But one thing you can use is called biosafe. And biosafe is a non-toxic product. Not exactly 100% non-toxic, but it's safe.
It is designed for organic gardening. The company has worked to limit the amount of impact it has on environmental aspects. There is a coupon code TWVG at checkout, save 10%, and they have a lot of other things besides just the weed killer. But it is designed for organic gardening, so it doesn't stay in the soil and increase the toxicity and cause other problems down the road.
Right. So that's what biosafe is. It's a spray. You can buy it in a concentrate or in a ready-to-spray form, but it is effective in killing the weeds. It doesn't kill the roots of the weeds, but it is effective in killing the weeds.
And we have found from personal experience that sometimes you don't have to weed all the weeds in the garden.
No. Now you might think, what are you talking about?
Sometimes lazy gardening is good gardening.
Right. So sometimes you'll be weeding or you'll be walking through your garden and you see something like a thistle, which seem to be popping up everywhere now, or the ones that you missed.
Right.
Are now getting nice and tall, and you'll find them like will be full of aphids or something.
Some type of bug.
Some type of bug. And so you don't want to pull that weed, because if you pull that weed, those bugs are going to go somewhere else and probably on your plants that you want to eat. So you might want to leave that weed.
Be cautious now when you leave these weeds, because their job is to reproduce. Typically, they'll get to a point where they'll put a big flower on, seeds, and then those seeds will disperse all through your growing area. So you can, cut the top off and keep it from flowering, just to allow that plant to continue to grow, to attract those bugs away from the edible plants in which you're growing, and attach them to that host plant, to allow everything to be happy, kind of have a balanced harmony. Leave that weed in there that's attached that all these bugs are going to, but trim the top off to keep it from reproduction of seeds, so you don't have 1,000 more next year.
Right. So that is definitely an option.
If you're going to go in an area, and you can do this in your normal grow area too, in a traditional ground garden, if you have designated areas in which you grow, you can solarize the soil if you have a lot of weeds and you want to try to go the easy route. So let's say you have a 3-foot by 10-foot area that you grow, and there you have several of those in the ground. And you can do this in raised bed, but again, we're bringing in good soil, so we won't have this problem. So you're going to take black plastic, a good 6 mil black plastic. You're going to cover that grow area. Put rocks, stones, bricks, logs, hold it down. What is occurring and what you're doing is solarizing. You're allowing the sun to intensely bake that soil. Don't worry about the worms. They'll go elsewhere. The microbial life, you can revitalize that very easily. But once that soil gets to a certain temperature, it kills off the weeds. It kills all the viable weed seeds in the soil, because you're essentially putting that soil in a very hot oven and killing all of that. So then in 2 or 3 months, let's say you do that July 1st, and you leave that until September, pull that back, your weeding will be very easy next year. You can revitalize it by putting manure tea, some compost, just drape a couple inches of compost on top of that bed. You'll be amazed at how easily it has worked to weed that bed of those weeds without physically doing anything.
If you have something like Creeping Charlie, it's very hard to eradicate that. So if you have a large area that you're like, I want to plant here, but there's all this Creeping Charlie.
And you don't want to use a chemical application.
Right, and it has this just like web of roots underneath the soil. It's just how it grows. Definitely that black plastic application will help.
Keep it matted down, because you don't want it to blow away. You want a thick black plastic, but not so much that if you get like a rubber mat, that's not going to work.
No, you just want like something like a black plastic garbage bag material.
The rubber mat will work good for the walk paths.
You can get something like that in rolls at like your local big box home store.
Right. So weeding, it's a terrible task that many people have to perform. Some people don't do it at all. And there are some gardeners on YouTube that do not weed at all. And what the end goal is, they plant their garden, they allow the weeds to take over. And then they save the seeds in which the plants that they've planted has survived and produced, because they believe that has created a stronger gene in the seed to outcompete those weeds in which they were growing with.
It's possible.
I don't have scientific proof of that.
No, but plants do become more acclimated to each ecosystem, especially if you save the seeds year after year.
But and when I weed, I pull the weeds up and I lay them on the ground as a mulch. The sun bakes and they create a mat on top of the ground, because all of our leaves that we brought in last year are gone. They broke down. The soil's been fed with them. So I continue to pull the weeds up, lay them down as a a mulch. They call this chop and drop.
Chop and drop, yeah.
But I'm pulling as many roots out as possible. But that's another way, instead of just putting the weeds in the compost pile or on the side.
You can also make something like the weed tea.
Weed tea, yeah, that we've done. So just a number of ways in which to weed. Again, you don't have to do this. Take small portions. Don't try to do a 3,200 square foot garden. Oh my goodness. Try to do in quadrants and in portions, and it will do a little bit now. There's a saying, do a little, but do it often, and that works with the weeding procedure. Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full-length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.